Investopedia defines financial literacy as the ability to understand and effectively use financial skills, including personal financial management, budgeting, and investing. Now that seems like an oversimplification of enormous proportions. I don't know about you, but the financial principles I learned from my parents wouldn't fill a shot glass. And I've spent most of my life living from paycheck to paycheck. Whenever I saw someone talking about their strategies for success, I always wanted to walk up and ask, "Where did you hear that?" I spent so many years living dependent on every penny I made to provide for my family, I could never have imagined I might achieve financial freedom. And the young woman I married had no better idea than I did about these financial principles we've learned in the last 18 months. But we're finally on the same page after 30 years of marriage. These financial principles can be understood and applied by anyone in any situation. The concept starts with the idea of gamifying your finances, setting up the board, having fun playing, and eventually reaching financial independence. The kind of freedom that would let you walk away from any kind of work obligations and live comfortably for the rest of your life. My name is James Hammer, and I'm an award-winning educator, director, and content creator, and I'm here to share what I've learned to help you and your partner get on the same page and both be successful in your journey toward financial independence. Since the fall of 2022, my wife and I have joined with a handful of others in a small group led by finance expert Steve Campbell. Steve and his wife Jen have opened their home almost every Friday night and have passionately and painstakingly taken our group of financial misfits, bonded together by their desire and willingness to improve their understanding of financial best practices, to not only eliminate debt, but to take tangible, actionable steps toward building wealth. Wealth that will eventually give you the freedom to walk away from traditional income-earning employment into the world of financial freedom. You're being invited to join in a series of conversations recorded in the home where we meet and spread out into digestible broadcasts both on YouTube and where you stream your podcasts that explore not only the broad range of financial concepts like debt reduction, wealth building strategies, retirement accounts, and Social Security benefits, but time or money saving hacks and the options for creating multiple streams of income that don't require your full-time presence. Everybody can play the game. Everybody can win the game. Welcome to the Game of Fi, because money shouldn't be such a mystery. So in continuing in our discussion then, at what point did you decide that this particular group, this gamified group, which has gone through a couple of different sort of iterations from when it first started, because we had called it Choose Christian Fi initially. But so what was your process in thinking about, all right, we want to bring this sort of knowledge to people, and how did you approach the church, setting up a small group, things like that? How did that part of the journey go for you?
Yeah, so initially, Jim, I want the obvious answer there is going to be the financial peace university that a lot of churches have.
The Dave Ramsey.
Yeah, Dave Ramsey, and that was kind of the first idea of getting involved in a church that I had that maybe I could be part of. Is maybe
like
lead one of those. There's also other ones like.
Was it
Compass, Crown, it now turned to Compass. I think ownership of the program changed a little bit, but yeah, there were other programs out there. But in the end, when I looked at everything that's out there, there really wasn't something that was a systematic approach, right? Dave Ramsey is great. Look, I learned a lot from Dave Ramsey.
Mm-hmm.
That the snowball thing, now granted, he came up with Snowball, but I've been living that, for quite some time. I don't know if I called it Snowball, but you learn a lot from Dave Ramsey's program, without a doubt.
Right.
But there comes a point where you pay off your debt, and you are now, I guess, financially free, or you hit that, what we call FI, financial independence. But then what?
Right, that's the question.
Right.
Yeah, it's like
What comes after that?
Right.
there has to be more to it.
So you felt like some of the other programs that were out there just kind of stopped short. It it got you out of debt,
Right.
but then it didn't really tell you what to do to
Right.
increase your wealth, which is not necessarily the goal of the program. I mean, the goal of the idea is not just to
Right.
increase your wealth, but to get to a place where you don't have to depend on anyone else or any other job or anything else to be able to sustain your living. And then that frees you up to do a variety of things that you're interested in. And we talked about the three things, and we'll get into that at some later point. But the idea that you now have, so you're now free of all debt, what do? And so what were you thinking then in taking things to a next step and creating this group?
Yeah.
Well, I was going to add a little bit to that too. I think also as well, when you look at Christians in general, there's different camps that you could fall in when it comes to money. And that can either be like like the Joel Osteen kind of, what is the term I'm looking for? The health and wellness.
Kind of prosperity gospel to an extent, yes.
Exactly. You have the prosperity gospel, and then on the other end of the spectrum, you have Christians who are like, give everything away, don't save anything, live in poverty or even on your own.
Right. So
and
those
you can use scripture passages to justify either.
to support those.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so the question then is, what message makes sense? Where do we think God is really wanting us to go in? Because either of those directions can, I think, create missteps or skewed priorities.
And I think for those who don't necessarily know maybe what those things are, I think we know that the prosperity gospel is primarily a mentality that says that God wants us to live an abundant life, and that all we have to do is believe that and give to God, and He'll take care of us. And so the idea is that wealth is kind of like the byproduct of being part of God's kingdom in the prosperity gospel. The other one being a much more, what you were just talking about, being a much more stoic approach that says, Christians really shouldn't be prosperous, shouldn't have wealth. It's contrary to how the Bible tells us. Some people would suggest that it's contrary to how the Bible tells us to live, that we should just live within our means, and then everything else we just give away or give to the church or whatever. And so so those are the kind of the things, just to give a little bit of background for some people who might not necessarily understand what the prosperity gospel and those kind of things talk about. So, but looking at again what we were talking about with the Carpenter Square, looking at wealth as a tool that God definitely wants us to use for the betterment of the world around us. And so, continue that thought there.
Yeah. So first, in our group, the Game of Five. Let's be clear, we use biblical principles. We almost never, I don't know if we've ever opened a Bible in our church group. We've been meeting over a year and a half now at least. And we'll mention the Bible every now and then, but for the most part, we just know that the principles we use are biblical.
Right.
We don't subscribe to either of the two theories that you put out there. It's not trust, and everything's going to be okay. Live biblically and trust, and everything's going to be okay. But we also don't subscribe to the approach of, hey, when you have everything, you give it away and help others. The parable of the talents is what we believe. You are given something. Be good stewards of that, and you will be given more.
Okay.
Do it efficiently. Be efficient with your money. Do the right thing, biblical principles, and you will have more to do more with. And that's what we really believe in. But going back to the actual process itself, Dave Ramsey was great. He told you get out of debt. He didn't necessarily have a systematic approach on how to do it. It was just pay down your debt. Yeah, sure, he would use The emotional approach to paying down debt, which is pay off your smallest balance first, and then get that emotional boost, and then get to the next one and continue that emotional boost. We call that the snowball. He calls it the snowball. You could take a different approach, which is the avalanche, which is just emotions out of it and just use numbers approach, right? Highest debt will save you money, so pay that off first, save a little bit more, go to the next one. You don't get that emotional boost because it might take you longer to pay off that higher balance than that higher interest than that lower interest one that is close to being paid off earlier. But in the game of FI in our group, we take emotions out of it, but most importantly, we have a systematic approach to achieve that first most important thing, which is get out of debt. Get out of debt. And so while these other programs don't do that, we do that. We take it then to the next level. After you get out of debt, you've got to build your wealth. But like you said, it's not about making a ton of money. Could you make a ton of money and do great things with it? Absolutely. But I saw a bumper sticker once, Jim, and it said, "He who dies with the most money is dead."
Yeah, still dead.
It's still dead, right?
Yeah.
But we believe that God has a purpose for everybody.
Right.
We know that. But for you to achieve your purpose in life, you cannot be bogged down with all the noise that is going on around you. What creates more noise in this world than anything else? It's money-related issues. You already talked about the percentage of marriages that dissolve because of finance problems, right? People that have health issues, have they been able to pay for their insurance or been able to have preventive maintenance on their bodies or to eat right instead of the cheap food now we could eat right? There is so much on finance that could fix all that, but instead they don't have that financial independence, and the worriness, the noise, all that noise out there is created. So how can you be open to be led to your purpose in life if what you're focusing on is money? Our group, the Game of Five, puts money where it belongs. We don't focus on money. We don't. We focus on what we value in life. And nowhere in there is money. I've asked people, everybody asks, and we'll go through that exercise later, I'm sure in another podcast.
Yeah.
We always ask, what is it that you value? And we ask you 3 questions, and we'll get to that. But nowhere in there is, oh, I want to be the wealthiest guy in the world when I die.
Yeah, when you asked me those 3 questions, my first thought was not money. Didn't have anything to do with money. And we'll talk about those questions in a later podcast at some point, because we're going to share this whole process, I think, with our audience in a desire to just to share this knowledge and share this experience, because it has absolutely been life-changing for me, and I know that it's absolutely been life-changing for other people as well.
I think that's the point too, though, is that when we look at small groups and you look at finances and you look at the church in general, I think that's the point. There's a certain point where you come to, and then the rest of it is lacking. It's the so what now, right?
Right.
So how do you keep moving forward? What are you actually looking at, and what are you doing? And how do we not feel guilty,
right,
for moving forward?
Right.
Because I think sometimes that comes into play. People feel guilty for having money, or they feel like they're not giving enough. And, but, you get those mixed messages at church as well with everyone's in debt, but we're having a giving drive right now.
Right,
and when pastors give those sermons on money, how many people walk out the door and never want to come back?
Right.
Because it's such a touchy subject.
Whereas
it's a topic that's controversial.
Absolutely. Whereas if the church spent a little bit of time training people in these principles, then people would get out of debt, and then they would be able to give more money. Because ultimately, I don't think anybody doesn't want to give. I think people would love to give. They want to contribute. They want to help support those in need. But kind of in some cases, we're all in a little bit of need, and that makes it a little bit harder.
Well, that's the hard part with our culture, right? Because we live in this culture that is very much a materialistic culture. And how many of us start out our adult lives in debt? I mean, how many are actually debt free when they start? It's not very many people. And when no one is teaching us whether it's parents or the church, because the church, I mean, as much as you have like the financial piece, the crowns, or what is it?
Compass.
Compass. Yeah. I mean, it's really after the fact, right? After
Right.
you've already built debt.
Right. Trying to figure out how to
There's
get out of this hole.
no preventive measures for one.
Right.
So our current, younger generations aren't learning how to stay out of debt. They're learning how to go into debt.
Right.
I mean, that's how everything in our culture right now, and even with our churches, is set up, to be honest. Because when they do their giving drives, right? Do they have the money already for the things that they're going to do, or are these churches taking out loans for their building projects or whatever else it is that they're doing? And so there's not a modeling
Right.
anywhere really
For what they're doing.
for
I mean,
what to do and how to
Yep.
move forward.
Getting
And so
into
then it's
debt
hard
is
to
so
trust
easy.
the church
Yep.
It is.
Yep.
with that when they're not addressing debt first.
Yeah. Oh, that's a huge point. That's a huge point. How challenging it is to trust
And I
when
think that's where
you're not
we
addressing the
just,
needs to begin with, right?
It's how do we care for people enough to be open and honest with that conversation to
Yeah.
say we don't. The joy we get is seeing people become debt free.
Right,
and
right.
So, and it's not. I'm not saying the church doesn't want that for people, but
Right.
that's not, I think, the upfront message
Right.
that we get.
Well,
It's-
and I think that we've talked about this,
Yeah.
the fact that the church really has a system that it uses, but it doesn't take that into account, that,
Right.
that it really should train people how to get out, how to handle their finances and get out of debt,
Right.
so that then they can participate in the fulfilling spiritual activity of giving.
The church,
Right.
the church has a reactive model. People who approach the church and say, "I need help," they're already in a tough situation.
Right.
Right. So now the church is going to go down two paths. It's going to be, well, we're going to pray for you. Okay. Well, the parable of the talents says it requires action, not
Right.
just prayer. Right. Prayer
Right.
is a good thing. It
Right.
works.
Right.
But that's not going to solve the issues.
Right.
Okay. Number two, they have benevolence. Benevolence.
The
Well,
Band-Aid.
we're gonna put a Band-Aid on this for a period of time. We're not gonna solve the problem that got you into this.
Right.
But we're gonna at least put a Band-Aid on it so that you can get to tomorrow.
Right. It's kind of a teach a guy a fish to fish scenario where you feed them for the day, but you don't teach them the principles
Exactly.
that will eventually allow them to feed themselves
Right.
and be much smarter with their money choices and do the things that they need to do. Where that's what the business that's the business that the church really should be in,
Absolutely.
as
Right.
opposed to just putting band-aids on those things.
In the game of yes, and in
Yeah.
the game of five, we understand that people have made bad decisions with their finances. I started out doing the exact same thing. Trust me. My two best friends in college were Visa and MasterCard. My best friends,
Yeah.
I would borrow from my friends all the time.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I wouldn't pay them back when I told them I'd pay them back.
Right.
And it got me into a lot of trouble. I mean, a ton of financial trouble. But that's why we have to talk about money.
Right.
You don't talk about it, people are going to continue to make those
The
mistakes.
same mistakes
So-
over and over
And
again.
my brain was just thinking about how it's also reflective in marriage, right? Because the church, I mean, when you think about like the church as it works, it's a relationship, right?
Right.
Between the members and the, everyone that's there, and that's like a bigger microcosm of like a family, right? Husband and wife and kids, and how that works on the smaller level. And, if the church can't even be honest and open and reflective on finances well enough, then how are families expected to do that either?
Yeah.
And the church is really concerned about, obviously we want families to stay together, and finances are the number one thing,
Right.
usually, that
Right.
create that dissonance, those problems, those issues. And the church is still not able to, I think, be open and honest.
And really effectively address
Yes,
that. Yeah.
because how often do church members get to see and understand and know about church finances?
Right. I mean, I think that the church as a whole tries to have more transparency, but again, you're talking about people. You're talking about people who are doing what they do for all kinds of different reasons, and I think again, you're talking about where these people who eventually become pastors and stuff, they haven't had any more training in the financial arena than any of the rest of us had.
Exactly.
So they're operating off of a model that they, that is just the tradition. It's what we're accustomed to, so we just accept it and we do it. But oftentimes we really need to evaluate those things and say, is what we're doing really the best thing for not only the church but also for the people that come? The people that are part of it. How much better would it be if a family came to you in need and said, hey, we're struggling, and rather than just giving them financial help, you said, hey, we'd like to even maybe have someone come over and help you with your finances a little bit, or have you come to a class, or have joined this group, or there's no obligation, but if we're going to help you, then we don't want to just give you a fish, we want to teach you to fish, so that you can then not have to come back to us again. Not that we wouldn't help you, but you don't need to come back, because we've taught you what you need to do to create a financially stable foundation for yourselves.
And they're able to pass it on to others
to their family and their children.
Remember the two ways to learn: experimentation and through education. Right. We're the education side. And I know a lot of people who may be listening to this or watching this on YouTube, they're probably wondering, so what gives you that knowledge? What is it that says you have the right answers? And I get it. We haven't really addressed that. So let's address that and just put it in the backseat once and for all.
Okay.
The experience is great. Don't get me wrong. Everybody learns from experience. And God knows I learned in painful ways sometimes.
You and me both.
Don't have a car when you walk out of work and the car's not there because it got repossessed in the middle of the night on a closing shift at McDonald's. I learned painfully, but there was also now the other side that I actually do have. So leaving the military, I did get recruited and signed or got a job with one of the very established nationwide brokerage firms in the country.
Okay, and that's why I didn't want to bring that out, because I didn't know how much you really wanted to share about that. I know that that you aren't necessarily able to full on give financial advice to people, but you can certainly share in these concepts and talk about these things because we're not directing people to particular products or any kind of particular thing. And if that comes along, Jen will do all that.
That is correct. So when I did get picked up by this brokerage firm, I went from what I thought being an expert was to actually being an expert in the world of finance and investing, whether it was a Series 7, Series 66, insurance, switched out of being a financial advisor, going into the compliance side of it, had to get a Series 9, Series 10, Series 24. So I have all of that experience. But you're right. I can't, because I have those licenses, I can't give financial advice to anybody that I'm not contractually obligated to give financial advice to. So choose Christian. I'm sorry.
Game of
the Game of Five is. Will there be people on there that give advice? Of course, there will be. It's a finance group. But will I give you advice? No, I won't give you investment advice. I will educate you more than you will ever know when it comes to investments and personal finance.
And ultimately, everything we share in this podcast is not a you must do, but it is a, hey, you need to know these options are out here. I think
that concludes part 2. Please join us for part 3 of this conversation, available now, as Steve shares how to keep moving forward in the game by keeping your eyes on the prize, and discover how the only losing move in the game of Fi can be avoided. Do you have what it takes to play the game of Fi? Find out next time.